My name is Genevieve. I'm a paleoanthropologist and rock art researcher, and I study some of the oldest art in the world. And I'm here today in the field for the first episode of season 3 of Cave Art 101. So this is the field series in partnership with World of Paleoanthropology. So I'm up here on the side because I want to draw your attention to that little lonely rock that's down behind me there, okay? Just found some inscriptions on the flat surface of that rock. And I wanted to explain context because context is really important. So we'll go down and actually look at the descriptions in a minute. But I wanted to give you the big picture first, okay? One of the things when you're surveying wherever you are in the world, every area, every culture has its own patterns, like its own intentions and its own reasoning for why they make the art where they do. And figuring that out is often one of the first steps to starting to kind of start to be able to predict where you should be looking. So in this case, where we are, there's a lot of these what I would almost call like sign rocks or signposts. So again, isolated, big rock, flat surface. There is the main desert corridor behind me there. And then this is off on what's called the side wadi. Wadi is basically the Arabic word for canyon. All by its lonesome on the wadi floor with that flat surface very much facing out towards the desert. So to me, that definitely suggests like this is something that is meant to be seen as opposed to, say, the caves in Europe, where if it's deep in a cave, the audience size is probably not going to be very large. All right. So just wanted to give you that kind of context and a sense of where we are and what we're looking at here before I actually go over and show you the inscriptions. See you in a minute. Okay. So here we are down on the wadi floor. So that's the bottom of the canyon. And our big rock right behind me. There it is. So, of course, before I was up over on the side over there looking down at it. But as you can see, very flat. There's the main desert corridor behind us. And here we are in this little side area. There you go. Just to give you the full context there. So there we go. So here's our placement of our rock, which really has that signpost kind of feel to it, doesn't it? So now let's look at what's actually on it. So first of all, you can see there's some inscriptions, which is pretty much what we're going to find around here because paint's not going to last in the open for thousands of years, right? And you'll notice specifically there's a couple of cool things we can talk about here. So first off, I should just point out, these are actually some sort of inscription. It's probably Nabatean, but it could also be Thamaldic. So I will check it for you and make a note in the comments. But I didn't want to wait to film this. I wanted to do it during the excitement of the new discovery, right? Because that's always the best moment and why we do rock art surveying, right? Well, it's pretty much why we do what we do. So we've got these fantastic engravings only on this one face of the rock. So again, this huge face of the rock, this looking directly out as though it's some sort of signpost. So I think intentionally, this was definitely meant to be at least noted from out there, if not actually legible and readable from out there. And so what you have to remember is that when this was first made, you can see the folks from this era picked the rocks with the black patina, so that's like the black surface quite a bit. That seems to have been sort of their preference. Maybe because partially, when they would have first engraved these marks into it, the marks would have been like bright white, like just stark. They would have really stood out. And so again, if you're trying to send a message, you want it to be visible, right? So that would certainly make sense. Now, recognizing that in order to make it last, even for 2,000 or 3,000 years, which is probably about the age of this, you have to commit, right? So these fine line engravings like we find in some of the European sites, not going to be so effective in this kind of environment, in this kind of location. So you can see they used a different technique, which looks a little messier. It's called pecking. And they basically would have struck the rock repeatedly with another rock to make this deep, thicker gouge. Now, the other place we find this, and this is an interesting little note to make, is actually in the Coa Valley in Portugal, where it's not a full desert like this, but it's a similar environment. It's up on the plateau. It is drier. It is, it's kind of a cooler environment there, but definitely a bit desert-like, and certainly in summer it gets really hot. So they also did pecking on some of those rocks, and they've survived for 25,000 years in the open up there. So, if you do it right and the environment cooperates, it's amazing what can still survive in the environment as we're starting to figure out. But these ones are younger. Now, one of the ways we can tell they're younger is you can see how they're still quite a bit lighter than the rock around them. So what happens? I mentioned before, when you do the motion and you bring out that fresh rock, at first it's very white. But once that new rock starts to interact with the air, it starts to oxidize. So the oxygen over time starts to darken it again. And so we can get a sense of age almost right off the bat by like, is it a little dark? Is it a lot dark? Has it returned to match the rock around it? Now, the really old art has actually gone back to being the same blackish color as the rest of the rock surface. So it's just the indent that's left. There's no color difference. So that gives you a sense of more like what Paleolithic age stuff is going to look like. And that's also what we see in the Koa Valley, which is there. It's more of a browny red, but it looks the same. There's not really any color difference left with the rock around it with the oldest ones. So there is a bit of a science to it. Depends a little bit on the region and the environment, but overall, you can definitely get a sense of the brighter the images are, the newer they're going to be, and the darker and closer they have become to returning to the surrounding rock, the more likely are that they are older. So there we go. There's episode 1. Hopefully you learn some cool stuff, and we'll see you again in another rock art panel soon.